now's the right time to stand up for freedom? Could it be when you start to feel creating children who'll inherit the pain and the debt of this nation and be slaves to the banks that cause hyperinflation, who are masters of commerce, lies, and bad legislation? Whoa, if you looked in the eyes of 1,000 young children through fences of razors, their innocence stolen as the red flag of tyranny flies in the open, is that when you finally notice? Whoa, but I'm only a stranger here. I'm a long, long way from my home, and they say I can't change all the things I find strange, for what can one man do alone?
Welcome back to the Liberty Test. I'm Dan Castello. Today we're tackling something most of us pass by every day: traffic cameras. Red light cameras, school zone speed cameras, those new school bus stop arm cameras, sold to us as tools for safety, fairness, and accountability. The concept sounds pretty reasonable, but does it actually fit with the principles of liberty? Could a government that truly respected your rights ever justify automated enforcement? That's the question we'll test today. Joining me are show regulars Robert Schuon and Rose Leatherman, and we have a special guest who's something of a legend in the fight against automated enforcement, Stephen Ruth, known as the Red Light Robin Hood. Now, Stephen's story is fascinating. He spent years challenging red light cameras in Suffolk County, New York, uncovering evidence of corruption, rigged traffic light timing, and cozy relationships between local officials and the private companies profiting from these systems. His persistence helped expose serious problems, and Suffolk County ultimately chose not to renew their red light camera contracts, if I'm understanding correctly. But here's the thing, and this is why Stephen's here tonight. We're not going to spend this episode just cataloging government failures and calling it a day, because that would be too easy, and frankly, it would miss the deeper question. See, the defenders of these camera systems will tell you, sure, there have been implementation problems, and sure, some municipalities got greedy or made mistakes, but that doesn't mean the concept is wrong. Done properly, with appropriate engineering, transparent operations, and genuine safety goals, automated enforcement could save lives without officers needing to pull people over. It's objective, it's consistent, and it removes human bias from traffic enforcement. And you know what? That's a reasonable sounding argument. It deserves a fair hearing. So tonight we're going to do what we always do on this show. We're going to take the government's argument seriously. We're going to imagine the ideal version of this policy, one without corruption, without revenue motives, implemented exactly as its most honest advocates would want. And then we're going to test whether even that ideal version respects individual liberty, or if it necessarily must, no matter how well designed, devolve into corruption. Because if a policy can't pass the liberty test, even in its best possible form, then the corruption isn't the root problem, it's just a symptom. So, I laid out the government's point briefly, but let's unpack it. Stephen, welcome to the show. Would you like to start us off by explaining the major selling points the government uses to justify these camera policies?
Sure, they're always going to go after the safety of the children to get to our wallets.
Why do you hate children, Steve?
It's not that we hate children. We just know their antics. We know they're going to go after the safety of the children to get to our money. And that's it seems to be part of their playbook.
Right. I mean, one can hardly argue that running red lights or driving around school buses when they have their flashers on is genuinely something that endangers people. So that's not a victimless crime. So one could make the argument that, hey, if we are going to have a government with a government-run police force at all, their purpose should be to protect the citizens from aggression. You can make the argument that you are committing an act of aggression if you decide to illegally pass a school bus or drive through a red light because you are at a high likelihood of causing an accident. So to steelman the government's position, you could argue that, hey, we want cops to be solving violent crimes, but they're also busy doing mundane tasks like performing traffic stops and handing out tickets. in theory, this should free up cops to investigate actual crimes like armed robberies, murders, assaults. It also,
maybe if they were investigating crimes, not chasing down school bus runners, maybe then the police wouldn't have time to run their prostitution operation that they just got in trouble for running over here. I think my lawyer actually represented them, but nonetheless,
Yeah, we have a colorful government in Suffolk.
Oh, yes. I mean, you could argue that it eliminates officer bias because a camera's not going to racially profile someone, but a police officer could. You could argue that it prevents officers from lying because you're going to have photo evidence as opposed to having to go to court and have a he said, she said situation where the officer is more likely to be believed, even if you know for a fact that you hadn't broken any traffic laws that the officer claimed you did because they've got a quota to meet and they just want to give out as many tickets as they can.
I would think that they're not going to be able to meet the same rigorous requirements that they put on the general public to do construction. So what they would impose on us as far as our regulations, they can't meet themselves, and they won't meet them. They won't meet the regulations required by the New York State Department of Engineering to actually have those buses cameraed up and to be extorting us for money for people that are passing those school buses. They won't have engineers sign off on those cameras. They won't have engineers sign off on light timing, and they won't have engineers sign off on the locations that the cameras are installed. So it's the whole thing is thwarting the same process that they put us as individuals through to build a deck on our house. They will thwart that process because they can't get an engineer to sign off on these because
here's
right,
the
so
point.
now the part where we rip apart the government's argument.
Hold on. Wait a second, guys. Don't get jumpy here. Because if we dismantle the reality, that's easy because they're a bunch of corrupt assholes. But it sounds when we make the corruption argument that they're not going to live up to their standards, that the solution is just to have them live up to their standards. But I want to actually interrogate whether or not cameras like this would work even if they did all the engineering right and the timing right and all that stuff.
Well, the problem is how exactly does the camera actually prevent someone from running a red light, passing a school bus, because it's just a mechanical recording device. By the time you receive these tickets, it can be 20 to 30 days later. Okay, there's no lesson involved here, and the beauty of it is, of course, for the state, or the county in this case, is that they get huge amounts of money. I think the figure was what, 20 million in Suffolk and like 32 in Nassau, something like that. My numbers may be off a little bit, but it was a huge amount of money.
This is where I have to give a dog training analogy. So if you've got a dog and he knows that he's not supposed to get up on the counter and like steal stuff off the counter, if you catch him every time he tries it, eventually he's going to give up. So even if you're not watching, he's not going to do it because he thinks you're going to be watching or you might be watching.
Right.
But if he gets away with it sometimes and he learns to figure out that you're not usually watching, or he can figure out like when you're in the other room, he's going to start getting away with stuff he's not supposed to. So
it's even worse than that.
Who hasn't done that? Who hasn't driven through a red light just as it turned red because you didn't want to sit through another light cycle, knowing that you're going to be recorded? In theory, should discourage you from doing that, shouldn't it?
Yeah. What it does, you end up with a dual solution. But before I do, to your analogy, Dan, okay, but what happens if the dog jumps up on the counter, eats the food, he goes outside, and like a half an hour later, you come up and smack him? Does that teach him anything?
No, of course not. It teaches him to be scared of you because you're a goddamn.
There you go. It teaches, and that's exactly what happens. So you have two, usually I would say two types of people coming up to a red light camera. Okay, the first one is the person that is afraid of the camera. Either they've gotten tickets and they're scared of getting more, or they just don't want to pass the red light camera. So they'll come up and the light changes right as they're reaching the traffic intersection, so they slam on their brakes, okay? Mm-hmm. Then the second type of person who's like, I can beat this yellow light. And there are people like that in the world. And what they'll do is they're trying to accelerate to get through that intersection. And here's the recipe for what we found out in Suffolk is you get a bunch of rear end accidents because one person goes to stop, the other person goes to accelerate, boom. And now you have lots of issues with that, which Stephen can address better than I can. But you have the situation where you're not preventing accidents; you're actually causing them.
I see. So the fear is actually driving less responsible behavior.
Well, we should start. Oh, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting because Suffolk County, after the program was going on for a while and people were starting to object because Stephen was basically protesting this in public, they said, we're going to do a study. We're going to do a study in 6 months. Of course, it took them 18 months to do the study. Guess what the conclusion was? Rear end accidents were way up. Okay, so they literally, their own study showed that the cameras did not have the intended effect. Instead, they had the effect of causing more problems than they solve.
All right. I want to hear more about your experience in Suffolk, but before we
need to go
any
to
difference
first.
with the school cameras, like the school zone cameras that correct speeding, or the school bus cameras that stop people from passing stopped buses? Is that a different scenario than the red light cameras, or is it the same?
In my opinion, it's just another form of extortion. We had a lot of people being ticketed after school hours over the summer when school's not in session. So I think it was a bunch of mothers actually protested the school zone cameras in Nassau County, and they got them removed. And we never had school zone cameras here in Suffolk, I guess because they saw how Nassau, it was a bad program. It wasn't received well, and it had protests amongst women with children being dropped off at a specific school, and the program died in Nassau, and it never came to fruition in Suffolk. So
and we had some help too on the legislative side, because two legislators, Anthony Piccirillo and Bob Trotta, were championing Stephen's actions and agreeing that this is all about money. If it was about safety, then make it about
those
safety.
guys just knew, they knew it was a lot of fun breaking the cameras. That's the only reason why they championed the idea.
Right.
So,
I want to hear.
Okay, I mean, we know that yes, the state or agents of the state, known as cops, exist for the purpose of revenue generation. And once you realize that, you start looking at everything in a whole new light. So, but I think we first need to address, okay, who is running these cameras? Is it the government, or is it a private company that has been granted a monopoly on control of these cameras?
Ding, ding.
And yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, it's a private company that has generally bribed or tried to sell their product to the government on the grounds that it's going to make everything so much safer. But there are strings attached, which
worse
you guys
than
can
that,
go
they're
into.
out of state. They're not even a New York corporation. So how does New York monitor and police a company that doesn't even exist in New York State? They signed this contract with all of these clauses, and again, it was done, if not complete secrecy, but in the public not realizing what was going on. And then all of a sudden you start reading this contract and it's like, wait a minute. Okay, if the cameras are about safety, why is there a clause that if they don't get enough red light tickets generated during a 24-hour period, the county has to cough up money, basically give back money to the camera company because there's not enough revenue?
What if they just don't have people running red lights? Like, what if the cameras are doing their job and they're actually preventing people from running red lights? What do you do when you owe
you
the
have to
camera
cause
company
red light
money?
running at that point.
All right, this is where I want to hear your story from the beginning, Steve.
Okay, well, it's probably the perfect time because my actions were received best by the police department, who encouraged me to never stop breaking the cameras. So their first thing was, they shortened our lights, focus all your attention on the fact that they shortened the lights to steal everyone's money, got a lot of people killed, and now you have to focus your attention on the fact that they cut the light time in half. So basically what I was doing is, now I had the police supporting my actions of destroying red light cameras and them focusing my attention on the manipulation of lights. Then we had police officers testifying at the legislature meetings to the manipulation of the lights. And I was recording videos with the victims' families of people who were killed in these intersections. And then I'm doing interviews with the police officers, testifying to the fact that those lights were manipulated for revenue. And then after they didn't meet the quota, the camera was removed and the light was retimed back to its original timing, adding 3 seconds to the yellow time, because the camera couldn't meet its quota even after the manipulation of the light time, which caused deaths.
And worse than that, remember when you would go and say, well, we want the footage from the red light camera showing this incident.
Yeah, we got a Supreme Court order for them to give us the footage, and they would show the people laying dead in the street, but they would delete the accidents, the camera company, to hide their own negligence.
So you're saying that they had to trap people into causing, they had to trap people into running red lights, and as a result, they made everything less safe, and they actually caused more accidents and defeated the entire purpose
Right.
of
And
red
then
light
when
cameras, which was in theory to prevent people from running red lights or going around school buses.
So it got so bad that they had to start omitting whole fields of information. So the accidents went up so much that they had to start omitting pedestrian accidents. They started omitting bicyclist accidents. They started omitting motorcyclist accidents, just to try and lower the increase in accidents. And after they omitted those 3 fields of accidents, they still had, in a lot of instances and intersections, they had over a 1,000% increase of people that needed to go to the hospital from these intersections. So these were accidents with injury of people that needed to be taken to the hospital. So you had intersections go up 10 times as much or 7 times as much, and that's after they excluded the people who were killed. So they were excluding the bicyclists killed, they were excluding the pedestrians killed, they were excluding the motorcyclists, they were excluding whole fields of people killed, just to try and lower the number of increased accidents in these very same intersections. So they were forced to, even after removing those fields, they were having increases of 700%. More people that needed to go to the hospital from these intersections.
So basically, it caused some very warped priorities here, and it stopped being about public safety and became purely about revenue generation for the state.
And then they weren't signing off on the cameras. No engineers signed off on the cameras, and no engineers signed off on the traffic signal timing. And we had opinion letters, and we still have them, written by New York State, that these cameras are an illegal operation without the signature and stamp. Same thing with our traffic signals. Without the signature and stamp of a professional engineer, they're an illegal operation, which they're running in today, illegal operations still, but they're not extorting people with red light camera tickets anymore in Suffolk County because they ended the program. But Nassau County absolutely still is. And again, they gave away 25,000 tickets in 2 separate intersections. How are you finding 25,000 people in 1 year looking to run a red light? You're not. So the only reason that's happening is because of an engineering failure designed to cause red light running for a profit.
So it's an accident that they have no motivation to fix because it's getting them their quota and it's getting them revenue for the state.
Yeah, basically. Just to give you an idea, Suffolk County hired an engineering firm called L.K. McLean and Associates to do a study on why the accidents were increasing. And they waited, I think it was 18 months for the study to be completed. It might have even been longer. They paid $300,000 for the study. The engineering firm that did the study wouldn't tell us what engineer performed the study, and they would not sign and stamp the study. So this is how bad it is. So they performed a study on behalf of the county that they called it an independent study, but they gave it to a firm that does all the county work. So it wasn't independent at all, because the firm they gave it to does all their work and doesn't do any private work. They only do government work. So it wasn't an independent study. They gave that firm $300,000 to do the study. The study they wouldn't even own it by signing and stamping the study. So you can tell even the study was built upon lies.
A study was designed to arrive at a certain predetermined outcome.
Totally.
Steve, how did you get this information? Did you have to do like FOIL requests or stuff? Like what did it look like?
Well, the study itself, I went to the actual firm performing the study and walked inside and started interrogating them. I made a video doing it. The actual district attorney at the time, who now works for the camera company, that district attorney called my attorney and told him that if I go back there, I was going to be locked up. And I said to my attorney, watch the video and let me know if I did anything illegal. And my attorney called me back and said, no, the video was awesome. You showed exactly what you were trying to show, that it was totally corrupt. And yeah, they wouldn't sign and stamp the $300,000 study that they were given, and the DA had no business calling my attorney and telling him I wasn't allowed to go to their firm, because what I was asking for is what we were owed. We were owed the information: who performed the study, and why won't you stamp and sign it? You know.
Were there
Oh,
other
and then we
people?
found out at the time our Patchogue legislator, what was his name? Rob Calarco's wife worked for the engineering firm that performed the study. And then the DPW commissioner, Gilbert Anderson, who worked for the DPW and accepted all the blueprints without signatures and stamps of engineers, which I can't do as a builder. I build houses. I can't build a deck or a shed without a stamp and a signature of a professional engineer, but they accepted all of the blueprints without signatures and stamps. So I asked Gilbert Anderson why he would do such a thing. So he retired. He went into the private sector for retirement, only to go work for the same firm given the study, L.K. McLean and Associates. So the guy that worked for the county running the program for the Department of Public Works, Gilbert Anderson, then went to work for the camera company, the company that did the study for the camera company or for the county. So again, more corruption. So now you have a legislator's wife working for the company that does the study. You have the guy that runs the program for the county going to work for the guy that, or for the firm that gets the study. It's everywhere you look, there's corruption associated with these camera companies and the camera programs, because there's a huge amount of money involved, enough so that they will go to the extent of shortening lights or doing whatever they have to do to keep these camera companies in place, extorting us of our money.
And it sounds like the politically connected entities are exempt, or otherwise officials will look the other way if they don't get proper permitting, like you said. I mean, we need a building permit to change the color of our own shed or build a deck on the back of our house, but they don't need a permit for these cameras.
It's absolutely incredible. And it's going on today in the city. It's going on in Nassau County. These cameras are not signed off by engineers. And same thing with the school bus cameras. They're not signed off by engineers. They're working in contrary out of New York State law. It's New York State law, and we have an opinion letter on the topic that these cameras are, they include structural and mechanical engineering, and they need to be signed off by professional engineers, and they are not. Common problem, I think, with government. They cannot abide by the same laws that they put forth for us to abide by.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones on top. They get to decide what does and does not get enforced, and against who it gets enforced.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's something about living in a world where the government can operate as a mafia and they can extort from you. And it's bad enough when there's cops behind every bush, or at least you worry that there might be. But then when it's so cheap and easy to have cameras everywhere, what's to stop them from just loading up the whole town?
And that's just going to get worse. They don't even need to have their own cameras. They just need to have agreements with all the various technology companies. Like if people have Ring doorbells, they just need to get permission to have access to everyone's Ring doorbell, and they can have most of a street under surveillance. If people have consumer drones that they fly around, they just need to have an agreement with whoever manufactured the drones, and they can get access to the footage. Yeah, I mean, privacy is pretty much gone. You can, we're in the era of seeing someone commit a crime when they think they're alone is
a lot of people concerned with Palantir getting contracts and us losing more and more privacy.
Oh yeah, I mean, now we're in the pre-crime era, because now it's a high-tech surveillance database that takes the data collected by various different companies and pulls them all together and uses AI to do predictions.
Oh yeah, so it's a matter of time
not a threat. Yeah, what if you get a ticket in the mail because it predicts that you were going to run the red light?
Yeah, all the agitators are going to be rounded up with this one.
Yeah, you thought about running that red light, and that in and of itself means you're an unsafe driver. So we're going to increase your insurance premiums, and also you're getting a ticket for considering running that red light.
Well, this is a good place for me to ask then what the libertarian alternative is, because we're not arguing in favor of passing school buses and speeding through school zones and running red lights. We believe in an alternative, but what is that alternative, and why should people believe it's possible?
Well, at the very least, if we're going to have a government, people need to have Well, people need to have their constitutional rights respected. Like the main issue with these cameras is that they deprive people of their Sixth Amendment right to face their accuser in court. Like if the accuser is a camera, like this, and this has happened, like people have tried to challenge these in court and then they're told, well, okay, but you're on the hook for the cost of flying out a representative from the country or a representative from the company that runs the cameras, and that's going to be hundreds if not thousands of dollars. Like that makes it difficult for regular people to even get due process. So at the very least, people need to have due process, and these companies are making that difficult.
Well, they
If
took
it was
away
just
our
a cop that pulled them over, the cop would have to show up to court and they'd be able to testify. The cop would testify. And while there is bias in favor of the cop, it's not as bad as being told that you can't even face your accuser.
Well, that's what they did. They took away our right to due process by making it a civil action against us. So we lose our right to face our accuser or challenge the engineering to see if it was manipulated. And they won't allow for that argument. So they took away our right to face our accuser. They took away our right to due process by not letting us challenge the engineering. And they do it by making it a civil action against us and not a criminal action against us. So it's any which way they can thwart due process to get to our wallets is what they're
Now
going to
that's
do.
interesting because there was a guy though who got out of a speeding ticket by arguing in court that the cop could not prove that the speed gun that they used to determine how fast you're going wasn't just a random number generator because the company that made it didn't want to give up their source code. So I imagine maybe they've closed that loophole now and they're not going to let anyone else make that argument.
I don't know what state that was in. I'd imagine that they're going to close any loophole necessary to take away your right to due process. They can't have the engineering being challenged. They can't have the signatures and stamps of engineers being challenged. And that's what they do. They take away our right for due process.
It sounds like you guys are pushing for transparency here. So is the libertarian solution just making all the public records accessible, or is there more to it?
Well, you can't take away someone's right to face their accuser. So the whole system, these whole camera systems, whether it be red light cameras, school zone cameras, school bus lane cameras, they have a bunch of different stop sign cameras. All these types of photo enforcement really can't come into play. They shouldn't be allowed to come into play unless you can challenge all of the contents of the environment in which you were ticketed, as well as the installation of these cameras, which they're not. You can't. They take away your due process. You can't challenge the engineering. You can't challenge the visibility. You can't challenge the weather. You can't challenge the road and conditions. So our whole basis of our legal system is thwarted in order to operate these cameras. So basically, they shouldn't be in operation. If they have to circumvent the Constitution to operate a program, chances, in my opinion, the program shouldn't be getting operated at all.
Yeah. So can New Yorkers use some of our limited freedoms, like the Freedom of Information law,
Well,
to...
that's just it. They can embarrass people. Like if you wanted to take a video of somebody running a red light and saying, well, this registration holder owned this vehicle that ran this red light or went around the school bus. Yeah, you can work off the embarrassment theory, but you can't really attach a person to the vehicle because you're only going after the registration holder, which is another thing that they're thwarting the due process and just going after the registrant of the vehicle.
Yeah, good point.
So I don't know. I really don't know how they can. I don't know that it was ever a problem that needed to be addressed, the school bus cameras or the school bus running. I don't remember it ever being a problem that kids were getting hit by cars as they exited the bus. And I know that the government's not going to complain about the fact that 70% of all the tickets given off these school bus cameras are given in locations where kids do not cross the road. They may actually get off the bus, but they're not crossing the road. So any cars that are passing the school bus don't have the opportunity or the ability to even hit a kid, and yet they're being ticketed. So I noticed also a lot of people call me regarding these tickets they're receiving, and they tell me I was coming around the turn on a double yellow where the speed limit was, say, 55, and there was a bus on the turn. I couldn't stop without getting rear-ended, and now I have to pay a $250 ticket. And it's usually not one car that gets caught in that scenario. It's usually like 5 to 10 cars that get caught in that scenario. So every time the school bus stops on that turn, 10 people are getting $250 tickets. And it's just insane that these people couldn't stop. And it's also insane that the kids weren't even crossing the road in that location.
And yet, individually, even though it's a lot of money for the town, individually, a $250 ticket, while it's a lot, what would it cost that driver to go and fight it in court?
Yeah, more than 250.
Yeah, I mean, cops get paid time and a half to show up to court, but I mean, in theory, this should make it cheaper for the state because they don't have to send a cop and pay them, and then they can tell people again, hey, you can't. If you want to challenge this, you're on the hook for any court-related expenses, and that includes bringing a representative from the company to court. But I mean, if they lose that case and then the citizen sues for damages, that's kind of another story.
Right. I know that they are reviewing those tickets over the phone and stuff. So if you have a ticket that you think that you were given and that you shouldn't have been given, you can just call up and they'll review it over the phone with you. However, I do have people that have called me and I've gone over their tickets and actually driven down to the traffic agency and reviewed the video. And in this circumstance where they are coming around the turn and there's a school bus stopped and 10 people got the ticket, they would not remove those tickets. And they said, yeah, they were all ticketed. They all had the turn and yeah, they were going 55 miles an hour, but it's still, they would have had to have stopped. And the only time they're dismissing those tickets is when it was legitimately a person that wasn't passing the school bus in any circumstance. So I don't know. I don't think that it's legitimate, the program. It's not signed and stamped by engineers, and you're taking advantage of people that are in locations that kids aren't crossing the road. It sounds to me like extortion.
So if the current approach fails the liberty test, and extortion definitely does, I want to get back to what would a rights-respecting version of road safety look like? Would it be insurance-based? I mean, would there be incentives?
It would be a bonded law enforcement officer that could take the contents of your surroundings into the equation. So they would need to pull you over. They would have to identify who's driving and if it was a legitimate reason to be ticketed. So some of these people come around a turn, wet conditions, maybe they can't stop. Maybe they have a truck behind them and the contents of their surroundings depicted whether or not they would stop. And a bonded law enforcement officer would make the judgment call. All right, well, he naturally couldn't stop or he would have gotten in an accident. And in this circumstance,
skid through the light, and the cop should, in theory, take that into consideration because the road was icy and you literally
they're
could
also
not
doing
stop.
this too on opposing traffic. Okay, keep in mind the law, from what I recall, it's either 6 feet or 10 feet, unless there is a divider greater than a certain number of feet on a divided highway, you have to stop. And there's no circumstances to that. So if, let's say, you have a 6-foot divider and you don't stop going the other way, you're going to get a ticket. You're going to get an automated ticket. And the whole thing is, it's not a ticket on you as the driver, right? Normal infractions like that, if you get caught by a police officer passing a stopped school bus, that's like an instant 3-point tag. I think it's 3 points. Could be either 3 or 6, but I know it's 3 points plus a large fine.
More.
Okay, and that's on you, the driver, because you performed that action. Okay, whereas with the camera tickets, now you've got a case where people are going the other way, might not even realize that they're supposed to stop for the school bus, okay, and get tickets that are attached to their car. It's not on you, it's on your car. Well, who was driving the car? I don't know. You don't know. Maybe it was you, maybe it was somebody else.
I mean, ticket 3 weeks later, you don't know who was driving.
Right?
That makes sense only if it's an extortion racket.
That's the issue with parking tickets, too. It's attached to your car and not the driver.
Plus the fact that the cameras weren't put in, like, if you look at, like, the northern part of Long Island tends to be fairly affluent, right? Good. There's no cameras up there. If you go to the southern part of Long Island,
in the wealthy areas. We know that they're not putting red light cameras in the more affluent areas, but also
because people can afford to challenge them in court and they won't get their money.
Well,
so they saying they target people who they know can't afford to fight back.
Yeah,
so we sued both counties. We sued Suffolk and Nassau, and we won both lawsuits. Nassau, we won $400 million, and in Suffolk, we won $90 million. So if these cameras were legitimately in operation, we wouldn't be winning $90 and $400 million lawsuits. Now, Nassau County appealed it in Nassau County Court, and the judge ruled in their favor that the $400 million doesn't need to be returned back to the motorists in Nassau County because they were paid voluntarily. So when people just comply to these things, they're actually hurting themselves. Yeah.
What?
And now we're going. Now
if you don't pay, a cop shows up to your house to take you to a nice.
They said that the people paid that $400 million that we were trying to get back to people.
We pay our IRS taxes voluntarily.
Right. I mean, it's it's voluntary. Never mind the fact that armed agents of the state will show up to your house if you don't do it.
Well, that's just it. They're
chose to get that job knowing that your money would be withheld, or you chose to work for a living knowing that the IRS is going to send you a tax bill every year. Okay, it's totally voluntary. It's the price you pay for living in a civilized society.
Yeah, so the lawsuits Stephen is talking about are the fact that the original prototype camera program, it was like the experimental program. I believe the fine was $55, right, from the state, wasn't it? The $50. But Suffolk County added $105 surcharge to every red light.
I thought it was a $30 fee.
Nassau did, yeah. Suffolk. The reason why we only won $90 million in Suffolk is because they only added the 30, but Nassau added the 50. But so they added 100 actually.
And they're
they lost the lawsuit of $400 million because they doubled down and they were charging $100 surcharge, which was a felony. Actually, it's over.
Yeah, only New York State gets to add surcharges, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
It's a freaking mafia racket.
Right. And I tried mailing my ticket in one time. I mailed it in with $50 only, and they mailed it back and said you have to pay the. And another thing is, they said this money was paid voluntarily. It was paid on the threat of your registration being suspended and not being renewed. Your car being booted, your house being liened, which my properties were liened, where my title company, when I would go to closings, would say, listen, you have a closing tomorrow. If you don't come with this paid bill paid to the traffic agency, we're collecting double from you to pay it for you. So I was forced to pay them because they liened my properties. They also put judgments on you, so it damages your credit. They threatened to tow and boot your car. And they threaten to not renew your registration. So these are not voluntary payments. But when you have a judge getting his payment every week by the county, you have a judge beholden to that county and willing to make his decisions on the bench in favor of the county because that's who they're beholden to.
Right. I mean, that kind of touches on a serious issue with things like vehicle registration and driver's licenses. Like the more types of permission slips you need to get from the state, the more things they have that they can hold over your head and threaten to withhold from you if you don't do what they want.
And then they have a judge, judge willing to say that you paid it voluntarily, even though they had 4 different threats on your breathing down your neck.
Right. Yeah. We only threaten to strip you of your mode of transportation that you have to have in order to make a living because you need it to get to work because there's no good public transport in your area.
Yeah, you don't have to pay it.
We've been fired and gone bankrupt and lost your home and lost the ability to feed your children. But it was still voluntary because technically we did not forcibly hold you down and take it out of your wallet.
Meanwhile, they're putting boots on people's cars when they go Christmas shopping at the mall.
Mm-hmm.
That's how by the way, they love to enforce that way. That's a favorite enforcement tool. Wait till you go to something public, especially like the train stations are a big one. They love that because they patrol and they sit there and everyone, they have the list in the computer. So they just blip your license plate and then, oh yeah, you get a ticket. So you get a ticket.
Well, they call another company that comes and slaps a boot on your car real quick.
Yep.
And we found out at the point where it became like a war in Suffolk, we found out how easy it was to get those boots off and to snap the boots.
Yep.
So
I have very much there are people who they just sacrifice the entire tire, even though it might cost more to replace it. It's the principle of the thing. Do not let these companies make money because that is what enables them to continue their operations. It's like giving money to
I talked to police officers about it. And the police officers are like, wait, how is it legal for a private company to scan your license plate in the train station and put a boot on your car for what another private company wasn't paid?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It just perpetuates.
Yeah, technically it's not legal. It's that most people don't know what their rights are and don't know that they don't have to pay.
Steve, I want to hear more about how you actually fought this successfully. I mean, you were successful in the end, right?
Yeah. in the end. But it all started in my
It's a
church
lot of
because I was
pain.
it started with a priest, my priest and I conversing about how he was receiving red light cameras tickets unjustifiably, and me looking into it. And then it ended when it was such a bad stigma on all the politicians that nobody would endorse legislation to renew the contract.
Mm.
And so it started in God's house and it ended on God's terms. Where I brought light to the issue, but I wasn't the ending of the program. It was really God's will.
Well, I mean, that's inspirational to hear because honestly, the people we hear from in New York, the ones who haven't moved out, they honestly feel helpless. You know, the government is this massive, evil, demonic force, and there's nothing we can do, you know? So
Well,
the
my opinion would be you have to you have to put your freedom on the line with a program like this that's really based all about money. You have to be willing to put your freedom on the line. I put my freedom on the line. They charged me with, I think if you added it all up, I could share the picture of it. I took a picture from Web Crims on all my felony charges, and it was in the neighborhood of 69 felonies. But I beat every one of those felonies. Now we have no cameras. I remained a real estate broker. They tried to take away my broker's license unsuccessfully. I remained a real estate broker, and I was able to fight the program and come out not unscathed, but able to fight another day. I'm still a real estate broker. I still maintained all my licensing, and my driver's license always stayed in effect. I never really got too much hindrance from the fight. I mean, the biggest hindrance I got was code violations on rental properties, which was purely retribution for exposing the revenue generating scheme.
Right. I mean, again, they bank on people being unable to fight back, but unfortunately, like, we live in a world where it's very hard for your common person to fight back. Like, they can't risk getting arrested and being held in jail for several days because they have children or pets at home.
Right.
They have a job they have to get to, where if they don't show up, they could be fired. If like a simple arrest can get you fired and ruin your life, because there's that assumption that, well, if you got arrested, you must have done something wrong. So we can't have you employed here. And then anyone who you apply, like any prospective employers who you apply to, will see that in your records and say, oh, well, this person's been arrested recently. Yeah, they sound like too big of a risk. Like, they are banking on that. They're banking on you not having the money to fight back, and also just not being in a position where you can, because you've got too much on the line.
Well,
Yeah,
the
you're
punishment is
1,000%
The
right.
process is the
Right.
punishment. So.
Precisely. Yeah. And that's, it doesn't
But
matter
you
if
know
you're
what it is?
ultimately convicted. It's the process.
Anyone who can articulate can fight one of these programs, but you have to control the narrative. So if you go and do what I did, you can't hide behind your actions, because they're going to say, whoever dismantled these cameras is sacrificing our safety. So you have to stand behind your actions and say and convey to the general public that you are exposing that all they're doing to steal your money, and you have to keep control of the narrative. If you don't, and you say go out at nighttime and dismantle a couple of cameras, they're only going to control the narrative into more cameras and more extortion. And that's basically what I think was a huge factor in our fight out here in Suffolk County, was that every time I was in front of the media, I was in a suit, a tie, and I was basically controlling the narrative. The media met me on my terms. I broke the cameras on my terms. I got away with breaking the cameras on my terms. And I had already a ton of video evidence as to why the camera got broken, who got killed in front of the camera, and why the camera is an illegal operation, because we got the proof through FOIL request and Supreme Court order that they were deleting the videos of the accidents, and they were installing the cameras and the traffic signals without the signatures and stamps of engineers. So they were shortening our lights to steal our money.
Wow. So people need to understand what they're dealing with and why. They need to know what to
there's a
say.
playbook. If you want to fight a program, you have to control the narrative. If the government controls the narrative, you're going to be the one that's sacrificing everyone's safety. But if you're controlling the narrative, you can expose how they already did sacrifice your safety to get to your pocket.
Right.
How
Yeah.
much-
So basically, you prevent them from spinning it as, oh, this selfish individual who just wants to be able to run red lights without consequences, putting everyone's safety at risk. And no, you have to show that they are the ones endangering people.
Wasn't the media company in Suffolk, like, didn't they also own the networking cables or something?
Absolutely.
Well, that's Optum. It's Cablevision.
Yep.
Yeah,
so they had a financial stake in the traffic cameras.
Yeah, that's the problem. There's nobody here who was unbiased. It's just not the way it was. You know, the whole program was basically a cash cow. The problem was when they went to those surcharges, they opened up this huge liability pit that they did not expect, and
Mhm.
basically, that was the final straw. Because at
So the
that point, people
government
started
is not
suing.
omnipotent. They have made mistakes, and that's where we, as
Oh, never.
activists and citizens, can find the chinks in their armor and we can
Yes.
bring them down.
Because they do things. They do things just to increase their power, to increase their money, the money that they extort from people, and it's all in the name of safety. It's for the children. It's always for the children. Okay? And to speak to your earlier point, okay, how we as libertarians can change this. First of all, why are these buses on major public roads? Why are you discharging a child onto a 4-lane or 6-lane highway or boulevard when you could be discharging them onto a side street? Okay, where they're
Yeah,
not
can't
going to
they?
have to cross major intersections.
Yeah, can't they pull up in front of the kid's house on the other side of the street? Is it that difficult for them?
And the the other thing they do is some of these schools they pull up in the middle of the street. Like you can't. Why? Like why are you doing this? You know. And this is again why they go into all of these programs. They want, like you said, it becomes about revenue instead of about safety. Because again, what camera in the world can stop someone from passing the school bus? None of them. Okay, the driver's going to take whatever action they're going to take, and because the quote unquote justice is delayed, okay, it's simply a monetary fine. It does not affect your driver's license in any way unless you pay, right? So in what way is this not extortion, just like the mob does? Okay, if you pay the protection, then you're okay. You got to pay your insurance. Like
Nice car. Be a shame if something
yeah,
happened to
something
it.
happened to it. Like be a shame if it got booted. Or
Right.
your registration got suspended and you couldn't drive it, right? And
Yeah.
how is that a different argument? Nobody wants. Look, nobody, libertarians especially. We don't want kids getting hurt. Okay, we don't want to have accidents that hurt people or get people killed. At the same time, the using the state to generate funds. Okay, did let's put it this way: did anybody in the counties, okay, that have done this, suggest taking all that money and putting it into driver education programs, into increased safety programs, into learning
How
to
about food aid for kids
yeah,
or free school lunches for kids who can't afford
see
them
how
or
that
something?
never
Books
happens,
for school books for the children.
and
School
this is
supplies.
no, it always goes into the general fund. Just if everybody maybe
The
forgets.
politicians who get raises every year while everyone else is getting laid off because the economy is collapsing.
Exactly. That's what they do. That's honest to God
Yep.
what they do. They give themselves raises.
Look, New
Yep.
York State still to this day claims that all of the scratch off tickets support the schools. It's true. Ask
But
them.
I thought it was our property taxes that more than double our mortgage payments every
But
2 weeks.
but this is the point: is that they go there and this is going to help our schools. No, what they did is they took the amount of revenue that they generated from the scratch offs and they deduct that from the school budget. Okay? And then they claim, yeah, we're supporting the school budget. Like
All right. I
I'm
think
confused.
I think that's almost it for the episode. I think we've really hammered this. Does anybody have any final thoughts?
uh, just that you do have to stand up every episode. Okay, Dan, you talk about what we can do to stop this kind of thing. So I don't know if you remember this. Anybody remember this guy? Oops, that
I do,
blurs it. I
of
can keep
course.
moving it.
It's the camera keeps blurring
I
it.
know it's blurring it, but it says red
It
light
doesn't want us
cameras
to know the message.
unconstitutional. And then this other one that Stephen Ruth, even though he was persecuted, chased after, threatened, fined, He still ran. This one is Stephen Ruth, State Senate. Okay, so
Nice.
that these are from that day, from those days where he ran. He got the. Remember, in Suffolk, you need about 3,000 signatures to run for state senate. Okay, most people get 40,000, 4,000, 4,500 because you don't want to be challenged, right? Because they'll say, "Oh, this signature's no good." That signature. Stephen turned in 11,000 signatures. He got 11,000 people to sign his petition. Okay, because people know that these programs are not for their benefit. They're not for safety. They're for revenue generation by the county, by the state.
Mhm.
And this goes back to, the state likes to empower the state. They don't like to empower people.
Step one in red pilling the population and making them realize the state does not exist to benefit them. It exists to generate revenue for and empower itself and perpetuate its existence.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, if people could take this lesson and start expanding it to other areas, yeah, we'd be pretty well off, I think.
The biggest learning experience that I got from the whole thing really took place recently when that judge in Nassau County said that the people paid these tickets voluntarily. And that's why when we say, you are the resistance, or you have to resist tyranny, the lack of resistance comes back to be used against you. And that's exactly what that judge said. You paid it voluntarily. You never resisted. You paid it. You caved and paid, and now you're not getting it back because it was voluntary. You didn't recognize it. You thought it was under threat and duress. It was, but because you paid it, you're not getting it back. And that's what they said in Nassau, and that's why we have to resist these programs, because if it wasn't a scam, the judge would have came up with something better than that, and not have said, well, you paid it voluntarily. And
right, they would have said you violated the law, and yeah, exactly.
But what we have to do is resist. We have to resist. There's no other way. My property taxes are $20,000. It's like $1,700 a month.
Yeah, at least half of our property taxes every 2 weeks is just the taxes. Yeah.
So
like
if
half
we're
of
all
our
paying
payments,
school districts, they say it's for the schools, but if I'm paying $1,700 a month, the school that my girlfriend's daughter goes to, it's Portrush High School, has a graduating class of about 55 kids. 55, 60 kids graduate. So if every house is paying $20,000 a year in taxes over here for only 50 kids to graduate, where's the money going?
They should be the smartest kids in the world.
Yeah, I mean, our kids' school can't afford to patch leaks in the roof, but they can afford to buy a giant golf course in our town. Yeah.
Hey, they need that golf course.
They might want to do something with it someday.
Resistance is the key. Everyone needs to resist. And I think that the fight that I fought is an indicator that you can fight the fight and live to fight another day. You can't just go completely crazy and break everything and expect to walk away scot-free, but you can fight the fight and live to fight another day. I'm still a real estate broker. This is not an easy license to get. It's like a liquor license. It's not an easy license to get. I'm still a real estate broker. I still function in society. I don't have a felony. So you can fight the fight and live to fight another day, but you can't just not pay. You have to voice your opinion. You have to stand in front of them, and you have to voice your opinion. Nobody fights in Nassau County, and that's why they're always going to have these extortion.
Well, Steve, I can imagine a lot of people are scared, though. I mean, you're inspiring, but a lot of people would be scared. They have things to lose. Obviously, you did too, but you felt strongly enough to fight anyway. Did you do it alone? Did you have help?
Well, I had God by my side the whole time. I had people like Bob helping. I had people like Mike McDermott. I had, Paul Grindle. I had Jack McCarthy. We had people helping, but in the end, what gave me the emotional strength to get it done was God. And when people say like, I'm afraid of losing my job, I'm afraid of retribution or persecution or something. What people should really be afraid of is losing your family member in one of these intersections that were manipulated for revenue. And that's what.
All right.
That's a good way of looking at it, I think, because I mean, these are actually endangering people. So put it that way, and it does feel worth it to put yourself on the line a bit.
I knew that children were being killed. The reason why I fought is because I knew I could win. I had God on my side. I knew the whole thing started in my church for a reason. It was put in my lap for a reason, and I fought it as best I could, and it ended up coming. It ended up being a fruitful fight. In Nassau County, nobody's fighting. You can't win a fight you don't fight. Just like you can't make money on chances you don't take. If you don't play lotto, you can't win it. If you don't fight the fight, you can't win the fight. So that's the encouragement I have for any listeners. Fight it. Don't just concede and pay it. Fight the fight. Desperate times call for desperate measures.
All right. Well, there's got to be somebody else out there in New York. It's a big place who feels as strongly as you do about this. That's who we're trying to reach. Does anybody have any final advice for any would-be activists out there who want to get involved?
Well, there's always lpny.org.
Join your local county affiliate, meet like-minded individuals,
Right.
start networking, start building up your forces.
You know, I have friends. That fight brought me to people that I would have never known, and people that I'll consider my friends for life. And I'm grateful for the fight. It made me a different person completely, and I'm grateful. I still have my relationship with God, and the community respects me for putting my freedom on the line. And I think it probably saved lives. I'm confident that the fight that I took to the county and to the state saved lives. And I think that people really should consider doing it in Nassau. Stand behind your actions, fight it out. And if a woman did it, it would probably be a better fight. Really.
Well, all right. That's really gonna.
It's easier to paint a guy like me as a criminal than it is a woman.
If it's a suburban housewife or something who
someone that can
looks
articulate
innocent.
their grief. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, to all the suburban housewives tuning in, there's your cue. You should get with the program here and help us out. But okay, all right. I think that's really going to do it for this episode.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us.
you,
This
Steve.
was
Great
a
having
very
you.
interesting, productive
Thank you
discussion.
for
I think.
fighting, right? Thank you for not giving up.
Yeah, thank you for fighting for the rights of all New Yorkers and for justice.
Well, it was God that gave me the strength, and I'm honored to have met the people I've met along the way, and I'm grateful for everything that God brought in my direction, and I'm just a very grateful and humble person at this point. I see the way God's treated me since that fight, and He has thrown me so many blessings along the way that I can only be grateful.
You can't win the fights you don't fight.
That's it. Can't win the fights you don't fight.
Man.
All right.
All right, guys. Thanks again for having me, and a pleasure meeting you guys. And Bob, thanks again for the invite, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Try and do some
Good night,
stuff.
everyone.
Thank you to the Libertarian Party for always having my back.
Thank you.
Thanks for having a back worth having.
Yeah, exactly.
Appreciate you guys. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Where will you be when the order is given to censor your mind as free speech is forbidden, as martyrs for peace from the world will be driven away by the sound of a bellowing thunder and choke on the blood of a dream going under? Tear up our Constitution, and from every direction we cry revolution, standing together and without permission, soldiers for truth in the war of attrition, the love of our country as our